And as we have been informing you in this space, Nuevo León is facing a wave of femicides and disappearances of women that for years have placed this entity above the national average, which is already high in itself. Beyoncé Amaya Cortés case underscores the perils faced by women in Nuevo León, Mexico. The woman disappeared on April 6th. Today, authorities found what they believe could be her body, this in the municipality of China. Beyoncé Amaya was a 20-year-old Mexican woman and resident of the United States who tragically died after taking a few days to travel to her native Nuevo León. She wanted to meet with her family and friends, spend a few pleasant vacation days, and then return to her home in Texas, where her baby, her mother, and her siblings were waiting for her. However, a day before her return, Beyoncé stopped answering her cell phone. She was declared missing, and then the investigation began to trace her step by step until they found her body on a ranch. There she had been abandoned, no longer breathing. Details began to emerge about her sad ending. This gave way to a series of quite disturbing versions where even her friends were pointed out as suspects. Police, investigators, and experts are gathering some clues and conducting some interviews. 3 search warrants have been executed at the request of public prosecutors. Arrest warrants have also been obtained and have already been reported by the prosecutor's office for these events, the investigation of which has not yet concluded. Beyoncé Amaya Cortés was just a girl when her mother decided to pursue the American dream. Thus, from General Bravo in Nuevo León, they embarked on the journey of their lives to Mission, Texas, where they would indeed find a happy life and a lot of economic stability. There, the little girl would start her studies and wouldn't stop until she graduated, thus becoming the greatest pride of her mother, who never stopped instilling in her the culture of her true Mexican roots. That's why the young girl grew up feeling proud of her nationality in the midst of 2 worlds whose traditions she had equally adopted. Beyoncé, her mother, and her siblings found in Texas what they had been looking for, and even though she became a mother at a very young age, she didn't put her dreams aside. When she was living her last days as a high school student at a school in La Joya, Texas, she began to devise a plan to make herself known as a Mexican. She wanted to experience her graduation by honoring her 2 cultures. She had a stole made with the Mexican flag and the United States flag. She wanted to wear it proudly when receiving her paperwork during the graduation ceremony in front of all her peers and family. But not only that, she also had Mexican details embedded in her cap that referred to her native General Bravo, Nuevo León, that place where, ironically, she would return to have her life taken away. So with a lot of effort, the day she had been waiting for finally arrived. Beyoncé was not only persistent but also a very determined, charismatic, and pleasant woman. She was very excited to culminate such a beautiful stage carrying her Latin American roots in her heart, so she arrived looking extremely spectacular with that smile that characterized her, her long hair, and many mixed feelings about such a celebration. But unfortunately, things would not turn out as she wanted. On one hand, the Latin community applauded her brave act, but on the other, those who would officiate the ceremony warned her that she could not go to receive her diploma carrying the Mexican flag. So through her TikTok account, she shared a video recounting her bitter experience. Following the instructions, they told her that after going through her paperwork, she could put it back on. However, the incident caused so much outrage that the newly graduated young lady ended up being interviewed by local media. At her graduation, they asked her to remove a stole she was wearing as it was alluding to the flags of Mexico and the United States. Why not allow to represent where you come from and also the same country that welcomed you with open arms? For her part, the then 18-year-old girl mentioned that she was very sad because she could not use her stole, especially because she was eager to represent her country and her mother, who had worked hard to raise her and her 2 other siblings. However, she was still able to celebrate that day with her family amidst hugs, congratulations, photographs, and feelings of pride and recognition for such an important achievement. Fortunately, after the bitter experience, Beyoncé just focused on celebrating. She attended the graduation party in a long blue dress and shared the moment with her friends on social media. It was a new beginning. She always sought to surpass herself, so this academic victory meant a lot to her. Life was certainly smiling at her, but her joy was even greater when she later received the news that she was expecting a baby who had just turned 4 months old at the time of her death. The woman, now well into adulthood, had never set aside her Mexican side. It was a country where she still had family, friends, and many loved ones that she didn't want to leave in the past for any reason. This made her travel constantly to the place where she was born. It was a last trip that took away her chance to see her mother, her baby, and her siblings again. She didn't know that setting foot in Mexico again, her life would have a completely heartbreaking end. Easter vacation of the year 2023 was coming to an end. The new mother was still adapting to her new reality, which, despite being a bit difficult, she was handling in the best way, but above all, happy. Thanks to the fact that with every step she took, her mother was always there to back her up. Thus, both began to plan Beyonce's vacation. She would leave for a few days, while Florestella Cortés would happily take care of her grandson. The plan was to travel with a friend and return after a few days. The girl then packed her bags and very excitedly left the United States for Mexico. They were going with many party plans to have the best time, with the date of April 10th, 2023 agreed as their return. But they could hardly have guessed the horrendous experience they were about to witness. An incident that probably changed the life of everyone involved. Even though the young woman was enjoying her vacation away from home, it was very common to catch her chatting with her mother. Every day exchanging calls and text messages to let her know that everything was going well, but especially to know about the well-being of her baby. She didn't miss a single day of communication, so when there were just under 24 hours left for her return to the United States, it was very strange that she hadn't responded to Mrs. Estella's calls. The first thing she thought was that maybe she had had an accident. However, when her daughter missed the return flight and was still out of touch, everything began to become quite ominous. From Texas, her mother couldn't help but think the worst, and she was right, because her daughter's cell phone was not only out of battery but had been discarded somewhere in General Bravo, Nuevo León, very close to Beyoncé's body. The last thing she had heard from her was precisely on April 9th of that year. They had a conversation in which the vacationer told her about her plans for the day. They were supposed to go out to dinner with some friends, and then she would go with her friends to watch a movie. Even before that, they had sent a video where she can be seen accompanied by other young people, apparently her same age. It was recorded perhaps on one of the many vacation days, and in it you can see the image of Beyoncé with 2 other women and 2 men, all 5 of them happily socializing, implying that they were enjoying their days off to the fullest. But that day, April 9th, the socializing was not going to be as pleasant as she would have wanted. The young woman was supposed to be at the cinema with her friends, so her mother stopped sending her messages to let her enjoy the show. However, a few hours later, the girl picked up her phone again to send a heart emoji to her mom, perhaps as a way of letting her know that she was okay or that the movie had ended. As soon as she could, Estella responded in the early morning, thinking that the young woman was already at home packing her suitcase for the next day. She was very happy to reunite with her daughter, so she stayed attentive to the mobile to receive news with all the details about the travel schedules. But the hours were advancing and everything was silence. The truth was that by around 2 in the morning on April 10th, the young woman's cell phone had already turned off. Beyonce had not had the opportunity to see her mother's last gesture of love, who was waiting for her the next morning with open arms and with her baby of a few months old. Once Mrs. Estella noticed her daughter's unusual absence, she had no doubt that something was not right. Her supposed departure time had already passed, her phone was still off, and there were no signs of life. It was then that, very worried, her mother chose to inform the authorities so that her search report could be issued as soon as possible. Time was crucial to find her alive. As the more time passed, the less hope there was of seeing her again. Described as a girl with white skin, long straight black hair, dark brown eyes, medium nose and mouth, thin build, and a height of 1.60 meters. Her clothing at the time of disappearance was completely unknown, as none of her companions could describe it, being the first indication that they were hiding something. Nevertheless, the announcement was still made with the corresponding phone numbers for any information, but the hours turned into days and no one seemed to have seen her. Meanwhile, her family in the United States was growing more and more worried each day. A week after her disappearance, there is still no information on the whereabouts of Beyonce. Beyoncé Amaya Cortés officially reported to the Justice Prosecutor's Office of the State of Nuevo León. When the search notice was issued on Wednesday at the request of the family, it was revealed that the 20-year-old woman was last seen with friends in the municipality of China. Some versions indicate that her friends left her on a street where she would meet another person, and others that she was in a van with other people and they were playing hide and seek when she accidentally was thrown from the vehicle, and not finding where to provide medical attention, they abandoned her. Interestingly, her friend had not had any mishap. The car was in perfect condition and she was safe and sound at home. However, she had no idea where her travel companion was. How is that possible? They did go together. That's what the family was wondering, in a complete state of desperation. For her part, Mrs. Estella and her other children began to look for answers, but it seemed that the more information they gathered, the further they were from the truth. For their part, the authorities also mobilized to proceed with the corresponding interviews, hoping to know what Beyonce's last steps were and who she was with before disappearing from the radar. The first thing was to go to the pair of friends with whom she had gone to the cinema. However, their data were so irrelevant and brief that they could not even give the data of how the girl was dressed the last time they saw her. Instead, they only put on the table the idea that other people could be involved. Apparently, the young woman had gone out to dinner with other friends a few hours before going to the show. With such imprecise data, all they achieved was that everyone joined the list of suspects, including the friends who had gone to the cinema. This at least until they could offer a more firm version regarding the sequence of events that day. According to them, everything had transpired normally. Along with Beyonce, they went as on any other occasion to enjoy the movie of the moment. Even in that period of time was when the young woman was communicating with her mother. It was supposed that this outing was going to be the last one before embarking on the return trip to her residence in Texas. However, there was a last-minute change of plans. When the film ended, the young women went straight to the car to drive home from Montemorelos. Once on their way, apparently the girl asked to be dropped off on an avenue just before entering the municipality of China, Nuevo León. It was very late and extremely dark. However, her companions did not object and stopped the car practically in the middle of nowhere for their friend to get out. If you are not from Nuevo León or do not know these municipalities, they are outside the metropolitan area, let's say the urban area, but returning to where we were. As soon as the young woman closed the car door, the girls started off to continue their journey. But why did she want to stay there where there apparently was nothing? Without giving much explanation, the woman only told her friends that she had agreed to meet a guy who allegedly would pick her up on that road in the middle of the darkness. Curiously, no one took the detail to make sure that Beyonce was safe while her date came to pick her up, because instead they simply wished her good luck and left. What happened from that moment on was what traced her tragic and premature end. On one hand, there were authority figures investigating in hospitals the possible whereabouts of the missing woman, while on the other hand, the investigation was throwing very important information that at any moment would bring out the true outcome of the story. As they approached the truth, there were some moments when the hope of finding her safe and sound and alive overcame everything. For example, on one occasion, the word was spread through social networks about the possible presence of Beyonce in a hospital located in the municipality of Linares. Some features and details were highlighted that initially made the family believe it was her. However, it was another girl who was also going through a complicated situation. But regarding this, Edna Maya wrote a message on her social networks to clarify any doubts to the public who were still very alert to locate the young woman in case they found her on the street. Thank God the other girl is already at home, but my sister is not. Of course, I will post it here when I find her. This is what one of the Amaya sisters said through Facebook. Unfortunately, in the investigations, everything pointed to General Bravo as a possible crime scene. It was 5 days of extreme search until enough data was gathered to proceed with arrest searches. One piece of evidence after another was forming the direct path to the lifeless body. In total, there were 3 points of interest, which on April 14th, 2023 were put under police surveillance and were raided. The State Prosecutor's Office carried out 3 searches, both in the municipalities of China and General Bravo. In one of these searches, the last one, Andrea, carried out in a house in the town known as El Verde, the body of a woman was found. What has been confirmed so far by the authorities is that the located body had several signs of having been run over. The person, the woman, was run over and it is still under investigation. There are at least 4 alleged suspects, one of whom has not been located by the authorities. We know that the others have already been giving their statements. An autopsy was performed on this body during the early hours because it is also very important to note, Andrea, that the genetic identification is still missing to know whether or not it is this 20-year-old young woman. These were properties related to people close to the victim. And although it was not clarified that it was her from Minute 1, her mother, Estela, knew perfectly well that she had lost her daughter forever. The few characteristics that could be made public about the state of the body was all the woman needed to identify the corpse. They have killed my daughter and they have killed me. That's what she expressed to a media outlet upon learning of the discovery. These 3 ranches that were inspected by orders of the authorities were located in very unsafe neighborhoods, especially the town of El Verde, right where the body was located. It seemed like the perfect area to get rid of the main evidence that could incriminate someone. It was assumed that whoever had abandoned it there would have done so with the full intention of it never being discovered and going unnoticed, thinking that due to the remoteness of the site, no one would realize. The road is very ugly, there are like pure streams and that, and right now at night, it is not a very unsafe area. The detail was added that no one lived in. Upon investigating, the ranch was found to be in an unsafe area, and it was noted that it was uninhabited. However, investigating a little about the relatives of the true owners, they could realize that conveniently, there were guys related to the victim, and to top it off, with a quite interesting criminal record remains, which indeed corresponded. To Miss Maya. The necessary studies were carried out to give identity to the remains, which indeed corresponded to Miss Maya. She had injuries as if she had suffered a road accident with blows and scrapes on her skin, but the cause of her death was referred to a deep contusion of the skull, vertebrae, medulla, cervical, and thorax. It was very hard news not only for her family, but also for the rest of the residents of Nuevo León and General Bravo in China, who did not remain silent in the face of the possible femicide and took to the streets to protest. Because they took them alive, we want them alive. Because they took them alive, we want them alive. Justice for Bionce, justice for Bionce. And next time we'll set China on fire. The query was what occurred to Beyonce. Now all that remained was to determine whether her death had been part of an accident or a femicide, and to discover this was the testimony of the main suspect, a subject named Martin N., 19 years old, who was arrested on April 21st. This guy was the one who had quite questionable criminal records, as not only in the past had he had firearms under his power, but he had used them to confront elements of the civil force and the Navy, undoubtedly handling a profile that could easily fit with the culprit of having taken the life of Miss Maya. However, in addition to him, there were 3 other people involved who were able to flee after they noticed the very effective progress of the investigations. And it was only a matter of time before they were pointed out as suspects, and they did not hesitate to take advantage and hide from the uniformed officers. After this, the prosecutor's office ordered the start of an investigation under the Femicide investigation protocol, in which it is investigated with a gender perspective to inquire whether she could have been a victim of acts that could have resulted in her death, whether these were acts committed with malice, by action, or even what we call punishable omission, which is a hypothesis that is also being investigated and has also been made public. I wouldn't want to confirm, Magda, since the investigation has not yet reached the point of clearly establishing which of these hypotheses is the clearest, but it is important to tell you the investigation of her death is currently being carried out under the Femicide investigation protocol. The mysteries surrounding her case went from being a disappearance to a femicide and then to an alleged accident, as different versions emerged giving different perspectives of the events. Moreover, the contradictions of all those involved were not the only thing that played against resolving the case, but also the mother who had just lost her daughter became a victim of threats where she was warned to withdraw the complaint against Martin and his accomplices. However, Mrs. Estela said she was willing to do anything to ensure her daughter received the justice she deserved. But what really happened to this woman? Well, unofficially, different stories began to be told. In one, it was claimed that the fatal wound to her head had been caused by a road accident after the driver of the car in which she was traveling with others exceeded the speed limit, and as a result, she fell into the void, being subsequently run over by the same vehicle. In the panic of not knowing what to do, those involved allegedly abandoned her on the ranch where, a day later, the body was found. As a second version, it is said that Beyonce separated from her friends of her own free will to then confirm her date, just as we previously narrated according to her friend's story. Then something similar happened on the highway, to later be abandoned right at the entrance of the municipality of China. Along the same lines, there are those who claim that the car she was traveling in was in the middle of an illegal race. So the drag racing at excessive speed caused her door to open and she was thrown out of the car door, hitting her head hard. All these versions with the same ending, the woman lifeless and abandoned. Likewise, Martin ended up being the main suspect because he was precisely the one with whom the young woman had arranged a meeting. He was her companion and then responsible for deciding to leave the body on a family ranch where they thought she might never be found. It is also said that before making such a decision, the boys went to a hospital with the young woman very badly injured or even already dead. But when they did not receive attention, they chose to get rid of the problem and dispose of the overwhelming evidence of their crime. Among so many different versions then, the authorities still have a long way to go to define what really happened. Meanwhile, the search for the other involved parties continues, and Martin's wait for his trial and sentence will depend on how much evidence can be gathered against him. If you like these kinds of cases, remember that you can also find my podcast on many more mysteries like this on YouTube and Facebook.